Hey, everybody. Welcome back. I'm so glad to be here to meet with you and talk about art, portraits, creating beauty, all that stuff, and to help you, whatever you're struggling with your portraits. We'll do a critique tonight and we'll do just a little bit of like a little lesson up front. I think that'll be helpful. So let's see if we are on and everything is working. Um, If anybody can hear me, just post a comment. Let me know if you can see me and hear me. Okay, I think so. I do think so. So things continue to be good here. Everything is opening up amazingly. And um, that's good news. I hope that continues. And the sun is shining. The, again, the birds are singing and that's really good stuff. So I'm excited about that. Let me know in the chat how you guys are doing on your side of the world, wherever you are, and let me know where you're coming from too. Um, so we're gonna get underway here, and I want to talk about a couple of things today that I think are important to me, and those two things I think create realism in my artwork. And I have some ideas about that. And I had some great teachers, Glenn Vilppu, Steve Houston, Glenn Orbick. These guys were and are amazing teachers. And so let's see here. So I wanted to talk about action. Remember, these are the two things that help with create realism: action and architecture. All right, what do I mean by that? These two things. The action is the curves, okay? The architecture is the corners. That's basically it. You don't have a good balance of curves and corners, you may be struggling with your portraits. You may be struggling with getting a believable portrait, right? It's something that people kind of believe in. It's not perfect. It's not a photocopy, right? But it's somehow believable um, on an emotional level, not necessarily a literal level. Okay. So today we're going to talk and concentrate more on the architecture. So if you don't have enough corners, okay, if you have a good balance, then that's the best of the both worlds. Curves and corners, you got life, right? The curves are the action, it movement and life, and the corners give it structure. And without that, you may be ending up with portraits or characters or figure drawings that are kind of cute, kind of cartoony, right? And so if you have something, like this, whatever this is, right? That has a lot of action and flow to it. But if I kind of take that and you know, I add a corner to that idea, right? Then I have something a little bit different, right? Depending on how I make these things connect. That corner right there, that joint right there, gives it a little something, right? This could be turned into um, an upper arm and lower arm, upper leg, lower leg. It could be the anatomy of an insect or a mech, right? Because of that corner and the joint, right? So the corners give it some structure and move it away from the cartoony thing. So if you're struggling with cartoony stuff, it may be that you need some more planes and more corners. So we're going to talk a little bit about, um, you know, literal versus symbolic, because we're going for something believable. That's something that's, let's say, that rings true. And this is definitely something Steve Houston taught me. It rings true, right? So it's true on not an intellectual level, not head knowledge, but really in your gut, in your heart. Okay, so it's less literal and more symbolic. So if I say something like, if I literally describe, let's say, a beautiful woman in front of me, I could say, describe her face literally. She had 504 eyebrow hairs on the left side and 525 eyebrow hairs on the right. Um, she had 102 freckles, right? Her zygomatic arch flowed into her mandible, right? And I could go on and on like that, describing every pore, every eyelash, and giving you a literal description of the beauty, but you wouldn't find any beauty in that. You'd probably get bored, fall asleep, right? So that's the trouble with literal, right? But if I use kind of symbolic language and say, an angelic face glowed before me, her hair unfurled like banners of gold. Okay, that's different. That's more poetic, right? It's not a literal description that would bore you. It's a poetic one that suggests things. Okay, so it's very suggestive, very symbolic. And that's kind of the way with art, it's believable. We need a combination of these things, not too literal, and perhaps you could go pretty symbolic. You can go very symbolic and get an emotional, truth going with with shapes, colors, and values. And so there's a range here that we're going for. But let's kind of get in here. Let me check the comments here. Maggie, how you doing? Welcome. So glad you're here. And Den, yeah, welcome to you too. MG, what's happening? And can you guys see anything? Oh, guys. There it is. That's what I'm doing. Thank you so much. There's a bit to wrangle, and I blew that. But I was basically talking about, let's start over, okay? I wanted to talk about action. So bear with me, guys. I wanted to talk about action and architecture and kind of finding a balance of both. And with action, we have the flow, the rhythm, and the gesture. Hey, hi, Lorenzo. Good to see you. Let me know where you guys are from. And let me know if you guys can see my screen as well. I think you can. The action is the flow, it's the life, right? It's the gesture. And the architecture is the structure, right? It's the construction. And we need curves and corners. Okay. Let me know if you can see what I'm doing. I'm here. How we doing? Um, can you guys see? There we go. Good. All right. Curves and corners, right? If you don't have a good balance of action and architecture, curves and corners, I'm just using different words here to describe the same thing. You might have, some trouble with your drawing. It might be struggling with it looking believable. Maybe it's it doesn't look solid, right? And some of your drawings may look a little cartoony, maybe, right? And that's fine if that's what you want to go for. But if you want to go for some realism, and that's what we want to talk about, attaining some realism with your drawing. If we distill it down, what are the very basic things that we need? And I think it's these two things. And so if you have, something like this here that just looks like a gesture, right? It could be anything. It's very cartoony. It has a lot of just rhythm and flow. Okay. No corners here. But if you draw something like this and you add a corner and a joint, let's say, you could turn this into an upper arm, you know, and a lower arm with a hand really quickly, right? Or it could be an upper leg and lower leg, or it could be some anatomy of an insect, right? Or even a mech. But it's that corner plus the curve that gives it the believability that we need, and it kind of rings true. So what does that mean, true? Well, there's literal truth and there's symbolic truth. And the kind of truth that we're going for is this emotional truth. It's on a gut level. It's not it's not the head knowledge. It's the emotional truth. And again, if I was to describe for you a beautiful woman's face in front of me, I could use very, very complex English words to describe every pore, every freckle, every nuance of light, anatomical structure, the number of eyebrow hairs, or I could use poetic language and use suggestive language that sparks your imagination, right, in your mind. And like I said, I gave an example of a glowing angelic face. An angelic face glowed in front of me with hair that unfurled like banners of gold or something like that, right? Much better, and it rings true. And this kind of very simple stuff can help me say what I need to say. Okay. And it helps me be a better artist. So my message is clearer and my craft is better. If I use, action and architecture, curves and corners, I got the best of both worlds, right? That's good stuff. I think we got it now. Okay. Just checking the comments here. So let's jump into the critique stuff. Well, before we do that, I wanted to talk about um, structure, right? So we're talking about action and architecture. I want to focus on architecture. So let's kind of jump into that. So if we look at the skull, right, let's find the major kind of skull anatomical breakups that might help for this structure. First, we have the mask of the face. Okay. That's everything, the features on the front of the face. If we were to put a box over our head, they would be on that front plane: eyes, nose, mouth. And the only feature that's not on the front is the ear, and that's on the side. And that's good, as we'll discover in later lessons. So, in addition to the mask of the face, we have the cranial mass. Okay, so those are the two major um, anatomy forms, really, that we need to that can be helpful for us. Then the mask of the face breaks down into three sections, and that can be right the brow, and then the denture sphere, right, barrel of the mouth. I can't spell barrel, right, and then you have the mandible. That's that chewing thing, right? This is the maxilla, which is above, and the right here, and the mandible is below. And so back here you have the cranial mass. So that's just some basic anatomy, some basic sort of bony landmarks, as they call them. And that might be helpful, right? To break down some of that stuff if you haven't seen it before. If we look at the side, if we think of things in very low resolution terms, right? Like a box, a lot of times that kind of approach, not the literal approach, but the symbolic approach, okay? Like finding points, finding points that we can connect that help us to define different planes, like front and side plane. And so something like this, right? If we connect bony landmarks, they really form a nice corner for us. Becomes very box-like. So we have a front and a side, front and side. And I find at the beginning of a drawing, at the very beginning, I want to think like that. I want to think low resolution, right? I'm far, far away, no detail. Because I'll get caught in the details. If I'm not careful, I'll get caught in the literal stuff because it's just so overwhelming, the light, the beauty, right? And you just can't help it. So you have to kind of force yourself to use some of these techniques to filter out all that information, right? So the low resolution box-like structure is helpful. Front plane, side plane, and a top. I could box that up too. And so this helps me get the drawing quick on the page, right? And it's easy to fix. So I think that's helpful. This is what I do. That's how I think, and that could just see if this works for you. I think it will, and let me know. You guys probably have used the planes, the rhythms, and all that stuff. Hey, Mimika, what's happening? Good to see you. All right, so let's jump in because yours is first. Ha ha. Okay, good timing. So let me throw up a little background here. Okay, so here we go. Are you ready? I'm ready. Just got to get my file straightened out here. Close this, open this, and get going. All right, Mimika, great job here. I like this one. It has the essence of it. that character of this female is coming through, and it's not literal, right? It's symbolic, it's suggestive, it's poetic, right? You're having to capture the action, capture the pose, right? Capture the feeling, and then build structure around that. And that's not easy to do, but it has to do with capturing the action and then describing the form and its direction in space. That's it. So you've done that. You've captured that gesture, right? You've got the angle of the shoulders working. And so it has that feeling, right? You've also captured the tilt. You've connected the head to the neck, neck to the pit of the neck, to the shoulders, right? So all that analysis is really good. The parts are good, right? So the eyes, nose, mouth, all have really proportions, really strong. The shapes are very good. A little long in the shoulder here, perhaps. But other than that, very strong. The eyes look good. And so let's get into maybe how I could be helpful for you um, with some, perhaps helpful information. So let's see. Um, your values are something you're struggling with. And so let's bring that up here. So I've got my 5 value scale here. And let's try to just analyze this in terms of values, because if I look at the photo reference and I sample the local value of that skin, right? It's somewhere, right? If we look at this thing, it's not here. It's not too dark. It's not in the middle. It's middle light, right? Middle light, 30%, right? If I sample her hair, it's almost black. Eyebrows, dark. So that's kind of local color. The hair is dark, the eyebrows are dark, the iris is dark. That's local value, local color that's making that separation between the skin and her hair. Not so much effects of light. But what you kind of want to do is have that 5 value system. So it's working for you. Well, let's just push it, right? Let's go and push this. Let's see if I can get a good little brush here. So I would go darker with the hair, right? Because when we sampled her hair, it was really dark. So I would take an average, right? An average dark. I won't go black right away. I'll take an average dark, an average of this overall hair that she's got. And I'll lay that in flat. And remember to squint and compare. That's the number one thing to do. And it blends into the background. So I'm just trying to put that in quick, flat, and just look and see what I think. Okay, let's say I'm happy with that. And then we're going to come in, right, and we took that sampling of her skin. It's quite dark. In this lighting setup, there's a rim light coming from camera left, and that's really cutting out her neck and jaw and shoulder against the background. That's the advantage of a rim light. It it separates your subject from the background. So if you ever need to conceive of lighting, or if you're ever lighting a model for a model shoot, and they're just not popping from the background, put a rim light or kicker, as they call it, and you can separate them, make them pop. And that's why they use that, especially in sports photography and fashion photography. So, but the key light is really pretty soft. There's not a lot of shadows on her face. That's what makes this one difficult. So if I go ahead and let me see if I can go ahead and put that in a flat tone. It's a little bit closer to the photo, right? So I'm in my 5 value system. I'm somewhere, in value 2, or maybe 2.5 to 3. I'm just sampling here, up here, right? You have to use every value in nature before you. That's that's difficult, especially because our equipment, our pencils cannot squeeze out every value range in nature, nor color. And plus, we don't have time for all that. So we can use this um, very simplified value range to our advantage. So there's my local color. That's kind of what I'm looking at when I squint. And then I can come and kind of go to my value 3 for the halftones in the cheek, right? The area here's that local color for the skin. Here is where it starts to turn and give us that core shadow before it gets hit with that rim light. So like you've done very nicely here, that's where you put your tone, and that's perfect. That works good. It reads as a form according to the laws of light, according to the kind of light, direction of the light, the material, right, that it's affecting, which is the skin. And then you can just go through and where else can I use that value, like lower lid, corner, inside corner by the nose, right? And just kind of go around and use up that value and squint and compare and just kind of put something on, take it off, put it on, take it off. And it's a process. Maybe a little bit there. Real subtle. This one is not easy because, again, the forms are, it's not directly lit. It's very diffuse, so it's difficult. You want to pick, I remember in your last drawing, you picked kind of the similar lighting that's very front and diffuse. Next time, pick a photo that's single source lighting and has nice shadows that you can cut out, almost cut them out with scissors, and just squint and compare and see. So that you weren't far, right? You just needed a little bit of adjustment in the value. Everything else was working great, and you're trying to juggle 6 or 7 things, shape, value, edges, line, color, lighting, form. And we just want to take it one by one. You did very well on all the ones that I mentioned, and the value one is one where you're struggling. And then you can just tighten up your edges here and there, just crisping up some things so you have some variety, right? Some contrast, which is what makes up art really is contrast. If you don't have any contrast, it's all just fog, right? It's all just elevator music. But if you contrast the low instrument against the high staccato instrument, against the slow low instrument, against the fast solo of the violin or guitar, you're gonna get some excitement there. You're gonna get some variety. So I'm just kind of squinting and comparing and relaxing. And so push your values, Mimika. That's all you got to do. Take a little risk, push it, and let's do another one. Okay. Very good. Very good. So let's go to the next one here, which is Mike. Mike, what's happening? Very strong piece, working on tone paper here. I like it. It's got the essence of the guy. If I'm squinting and comparing, this is, yeah, I love the hair, especially on his head. Looks amazing. Did that very well. Just squinting and comparing, I would just adjust some little stuff, but I like how you've used the dark charcoal, the middle value, right? This paper has become the middle value, and you're letting it be that middle value. That's really great. And you're adding the light and adding the dark to it. So fun to create those illusions. I always found that. It's like magic. So when I squint down, I just get that modeling tone, pushing the sides back on that lower lid just a little bit. Because he's definitely, he's got corners, right? He's a masculine guy with, you know, with a brow, eyebrows, everything's corners on this guy, right? So you want to go ahead and you can overstate some straight lines, right? Corners here, corners here. It's okay to put that stuff in because he's, you know, the more straight lines and wrinkles and plain edges that you put in on a guy, it's good, you know, for a gal, and makes them look less feminine and a little bit older. So it's okay to sculpt out these guys using more boxy kind of shapes, you know, triangles, edges, and not so many curves, right? You can use curves here and there, like on his beard, like you did so beautifully, right? Down here and up here and in the hair. So, and especially the mask of the face, right? In the hairline, you did a nice curve like that. So that's the contrast, right? It's the curves and the corners, you know, the straights against the curves, right? That's the music. That's the dance step. That's the art. It's the portrait. Okay, so let's kind of continue here. He's got those nice eyes that you've done. Um, you know, I'd want to maybe just hit that reflection. Okay, I forgot to take out the color information on this one. But maybe when I squint down, there's a nice reflection. The light's coming from you, from the camera, straight ahead on this guy. And he's got that, you know, skin is a little bit oily, so it's going to reflect. Sometimes it'll even be specular, like on the nose. There'll be that highlight on the nose. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's because the oils on the nose reflect the light back, especially at a direct angle like this. the angle of incidence is very steep, let's say. And then let's see. So I'm just kind of adjusting a little bit some of this stuff to either clarify or describe structure, architecture, right? Like that front of the cheek, side, front, side. I just put in a little bit more of a core shadow for that corner, for that edge. And you could sneak in something a little bit there. And then that gives it, it looks like it reads like a cheek bone a little bit more. Same thing with the side plane of the brow and forehead. So this is all tweaks. So you've got it like, 90% there. And I'm just coming through, and these are just my suggestions, because this is great effort here. And I want to give you guys some, constructive criticism and some praise, right? And so when you're dealing with, a beard or hair of any kind, you can kind of come through and treat it like a shape. Just treat it like anything else, no big mystery. But that lower part, just when you squint down, find a value for it. And a local, like an average light or an average dark. This is in the light. So, it's lighter than the paper. And so I would just put that all over the place and see if that looked right. And then I would come through, right, and just treat it like a 3D form. And I would take, and wherever it turns away from the light, I would add a little shadow, a little darker value. I think I need to go a little bit darker, right? It's going away towards the side of his cheek. So I'm just pushing the value. And so you've done that, but it's a little bit, it's not reading quite like it might if you just adjusted this value part. And then you can have some, stray hairs and other clues that we know, like the nose above. And some stray hairs, right? You'd have little details here and there. They don't need to work so hard on that part of the beard. Okay. Here, I think it's good, but then here you could let some of it, kind of become more of a, just almost like just a shape with a local value to it. Just let it be flat, and it's that contrast, right? The dark shadow of the nose, the crisp edge, and then against the soft hair. And then in some areas, the hair does have a crisp edge. In some areas, it's just lost and floats away. And then if you're turning it though, like modeling a form, light in front, push the sides back, it'll emerge and pop off the page. So those are just some little tricks, but a lot of great work here. Another little trick you can do is just to add a sense of a background is you can put a little bokeh, right? Pretend you've got this camera and it has just a little noise back there, and you can then you can soften things up so they're not so harsh. You could have some dark ones, some light ones, right? Just a blurry background here and there, or not. So it's up to you. And then the eyes, you could go a little deep with those eyes, right? There's that cast shadow onto the sclera. And so I usually play that up, you know, because that's the drama, right? That's the poetry that you can really grab people's attention. And then I soften the edge, just soften that edge a little bit, right? So it's back there in the shadows. We don't know if we know he's intense, you know, he's got that mystery. And then I can pop out the reflection and stuff. Okay, cool. Mike, awesome work. Do another one. And let's go on to John. I'll turn this one off here. Okay, this one too has that feeling, that ring of truth, that essence of the person. And this is, you got that right, you know, so you want to keep that. You don't want to lose that. Some people are, right, kind of naturals that just playing the guitar and they're a little rough, but they get you anyway. I'm sure you know artists like that, musicians, music, that it's not that great and well polished, but it gives you that feeling. I know you know what I'm talking about, right? It's not super refined, it's not photoreal. This has that, right? It's because the values, you really pushed those values so well, right? The dark darks and the light lights. You push the values. Bravo on that. And then you've described the forms, you know, you've turned these forms so that they've become 3D and they have a real believable solidity to that face. And then the connection, you know, to the neck, out to the shoulders, the hair, everything, right? So I think the values, the shapes, the edges, the lighting, the line, right? All of it's great. So let's just go through. I would adjust the gaze. Okay, so the gaze, if we were to critique anything, and it would be that. So when you when you're confronting, you're studying, I would suggest study. Just take time to study a minute. Study your reference, study your model, and see what is going on here. Because if we miss some things at the beginning, one small mistake becomes another small mistake, and they just get bigger and bigger until it's kind of a mess, right? I've had that happen many times. So, what I mean is, you're going to come through and you're going to look for a couple of things. One is the position of the head and the gaze and the gesture. So, you know, I look at her and I see, you know, here's the center line, and we're looking. You can see underneath her chin, and you can see if that we're underneath because these lines wrap around from the brow to the eyes to the nose and ear, especially the ear back there. Because that nose is higher than the ear, we know that she's tilted up, right? So it's like, you know, a regular head is going to be like this. And then a head that's tilted up, this is what I'm talking about, you know, doing that little bit of study and observation. The one that's tilted up is going to go like this, right? So here the eyes are here and we're looking straight forward. Here the eyes are kind of right. And intersection of horizontal and vertical kind of almost makes it look like they're looking up, right? So if we're on the side like this, it's not only looking to the side like a twist, but there's a tilt too. So we got to get the twist of the gaze to the left, the tilt of the head back, and that's what these depth lines do, right? They got a tilt, but also there's the center line, and then wrapping these things around and go around the backside too, so that there's a real feeling of dimensionality because there's things that we can't see, but they're real. They really exist on this person, the backside. And so in our block in, we're just doing that. We're going through that. We're feeling it on the paper. You know, we have to do that in this flat earth that we're existing in 2D art space right on the page. It's it's flat. We got to convince ourselves and others that it's 3D. And one way to do that is to draw through and around. So that's kind of how, you know, especially if we put the ear in down here and the eyes are here, we know that is the side of a box, right? It's like a box in perspective. And this ear and corner of the eye gives us that opportunity to do some perspective, right? It's like a box and we're looking up on it. And let's say, you know, if we put a pretend eye there and the ear, some construction lines, you know, we can get it to look upwards and to the left, you know, and you can connect it to a cylinder. So these are really basic shapes that help me bang it into shape, get things oriented quick. And then I'll be set up really, really well for doing the beautiful rendering, what you did here. Your rendering, your handling of the charcoal medium is very strong. Okay. That's killer. So you want to keep that and then just make some of these adjustments to it as far as when you sit down, you analyze what's happening and then do just a little design. The Italians call it the disegno, right? You just do your little graphic, you know, thing that's going to tell you the composition, right? Where do you want the head? You know, maybe the photo's here, but maybe you know, you're just composing where you want that thing on the page. And you're dealing with the very basic stuff in a very just a little simple egg shape, center line, depth lines that kind of show and tell that we're underneath. And, you know, that's maybe a little bit of sense of the dark and light. And just do a little study like that and see if it looks good. If it doesn't look good, do another one, you know, and then this will take a minute, but it could save hours of frustration, wondering what's wrong, you know, what's wrong with my drawing? Or I put all this time in and it was going so good. And then it just swerved off the rails. You know, what happened? So something like that, just a little design like that. And then it's like a little practice, like a golfer just taking some practice swings before he actually hits the ball. You know, if it's good for Tiger Woods and um, Kobe Bryant and all these famous people, they train and train and train. I mean, most of what they do is training on the field, on the court all week. And then they play the one game, right? So there's hours and hours every day training, practicing, drilling, and then there's the real thing. So they're doing most of their work here. We don't see that work, right? We see this stuff, and we see all the beautiful plays and the communication and the athleticism, but we don't see the struggle all week, right? Hours and hours and hours, thousands of hours. So just do that. Don't expect to just slam into a drawing and have it come out. As tempting as that is, I know how it is. Okay, so great work, John. Love it. Do another one, and let's see you back here. Keep going. All right, we've got Maggie. Maggie, you're up. Beautiful. Love it. Love the skin quality. The rendering is really nice. I think you spent a lot of time on this one. Um, wanted to. I think that, yeah, everything looks really good. If I was to say anything, about the values, I might say something about the values. To when I squint down and you see how there's this, what they call almost like a holiday right here. Can you see that? Right there. Between where the hair stops and the skin begins, there's this white thing there. It's there, but it's not, that lightness is still dark enough to be in the family of darks in the shadows. Okay. Um, I don't know if, oh, here's our thing again. If we take a kind of a sample of what's in here, right? What's in there? What's in there? If I sample that exact thing, it's pretty darn dark. And that's why value is predicated on what's around it, right? It's so contextual that if you put a bunch of dark stuff, right? If you put a bunch of dark stuff around something, surrounding it, it's going to make it look light. And if you put a bunch of light stuff around it, it's going to make it look dark. And so our eye could be fooled. So how do we get around that? How do we deal with that? We squint and compare, learning that simple skill, and then kind of having something like your 5 value system and keeping it really simple. And when I squint and compare right at the top, right at the beginning, I'm just going to flatten everything out and put it into the darks. I'm not going black, right? I'm not going black because that's for my black accents. I want those to be in the pupils, right? I want the contrast in the eyes. So you go there first, and everything else is a supporting role. So I'm not using black. I'm using 70% black. I'm sampling here on my value scale, a little darker than 50, and just put it in, right? Let me just back out and do that again. I'd put it in. This stuff's tricky. And I would just squint and compare and make these decisions. If I make a wrong decision and it doesn't look right, then put that dark thing that you put in the shadows, put it over in the lights, but just kind of make a decision. And which you did, right? This is just a little tweak. This is a suggestion where you could take it better next time. So you can make it a little more believable, a little more, right? And so now that light thing on that side of his temple there isn't popping out as much, just because I darkened everything down a little bit. And then I would just see it's very flat and dark. And I would just come in and ask myself, what about the edge quality? Hard or soft? And adjust the drawing accordingly. And that'll give me some nice results as well, right? These shadows are kind of soft. And it gives it a little more structure that way because that cheek is turning a little bit more, because the addition of the value, we get that sense of the corner, front, the side, because that corner that's now a little bit more um, explained. That's a good way to put it. Maybe the lower lip, I don't see so much happening there. Like if you squint, that upper lip is darker than the lower lip. So you could just go a little bit lighter on it. Right. And then if we look in the eyes, this left eye, camera left, is darker. Right. So if I go back to my discipline of squinting and comparing and sort of say the upper border of the eye socket in there, you know, is that catching enough light to bring it into the family of lights? Maybe. Um, maybe I could include it in the darks and bring it out later. So there's no one perfect way to do it. But I want to get to what I'm trying to get to is the sclera and the eyeball itself that's being lit. Part of it is lit, part of it is rolling away from the light into the shadow. And that'll give me some of that, you know, depth and drama. And then I can pull out a highlight. Because I need something for that highlight to pull out from, right? If it's all too light, then nothing's light. So I got to put some darks around it. And all this stuff too, it's all, we don't have time, you know, a lot of times. I'm sure you ran up against some time constraints and, um, maybe did, maybe didn't, but oftentimes it's just time, a matter of time, and you can do anything really. And then I would have to balance the other one because that looks a little weird. If I what I do to one side, I've got to do it to the other side. And back and forth, back and forth. Kind of sneak up on it. I usually never get it right the first time. And I'd have to play with it. You did a great job in there. Um, but the eyeball itself, if I was just to quickly illustrate what I was talking about, there's the ball, and if the light is camera right, everything, and on top, everything facing up and to the right would get the light, and everything facing down and to the left would get shadow. And so that's what's happening, you know, to this guy's eyeball. It's an eyeball, the ball. So light it like a sphere. You would put the iris in here, and then you'd put the pupil in there. That's pitch black because it's a hole, literally. And then you could put a little glassy highlight on there. Right there because it's wet and reflective. And then you'd have to wrap the lids around it because that whole eyeball isn't showing, right? It's being covered up. And then you'd have the bone of the eye socket on the upper border. This wraps around, and so on and so forth, right? So that's just a quick thing on eyes. So Maggie, that's a great job. Love it. really strong. You can be proud of this. Everybody can be proud of what they've done tonight. Everything's really, I'm very impressed. Okay, so let's move on to this very designed looking one, which is cool. You know, the values are very compressed. What do I mean? Well, in the photo reference, there's not a lot of gray. You know, it's, you have your light and your dark, and everything's either, you know, very dark or very dark to just white. There's almost no other halftones in here. It's, there's, I don't know if it's half dark and half light overall, but there's a lot of light in this one, and it's very flat. And so that's a tough one to do because there's only a few places like her cheek where you can describe the form, and maybe her lips. And but you got the shapes. That's what's cool. This one's very shape driven. And shapes, you know, if we just, I almost want to turn this thing upside down. And if we just look at the shapes, this is going to take the shape design and the balance of dark and light. You know, if we squint down, we don't know what we're looking at. That's a cool shape. There's a lot of kind of triangular shapes in there. And there's big against small, dark against light. And so you could look at it from a design point of view because there's obviously so much edited out from here because everything's overexposed in the lighting that, you know, it's not a realistic type of photo to work from. And so you're forced to work with shapes. And so having said all that, I would just push the values a little bit because you got the shapes great. You know, and you can push in here. Maybe that would make the chin pop just a little bit. Here really gets deep dark in there, huh? The eyes look beautiful. You did a great job with the reflection, the sclera, the eyeball, pupil, even the details of the eyelash, eyebrows, beautifully done. And so that's really fun, really cool. I would just maybe fortify the shadows a little bit. And when I squint down, you know, that cheek is pretty well in the family of darks. So you got to squint. And if it merges together, then put it in that family. And if it pops out, like right there, it pops out. Leave that in the lights, and the other stuff, put it in the other camp. And then there's little, you know, it fades in flat into the shadows, but that half tone that would be right here, the half tone, this thing here. There's a little, you have to set it up by giving yourself a little more dark, and the half tone rolls into the core shadow of her shoulder because it's a soft form that moves slowly away from the light. And then just give yourself that value number 3 so that it pops a little bit, or that it turns a little bit. And then just quiet this stuff down. And that was, you know, as far as describing forms, if it's, you know, if it's doing this, right, that means it's going slowly. If the edge is soft, that means it's going slowly away from the light. So it's going to have a soft edge. Right? It's going slowly. If it has a crisp edge, it's it's blocky and geometric, and so it's going quickly away from the light, so you have a really crisp shadow going quickly away, transitioning. So that one's fun. That one's really cool. Oops. And I'm not sure who did this one, but it's cool. So you can be proud of that for show. Let's see. Okay, we got we got some more, I think. Okay. This one here. Let me take a little drink of water. Okay, this is lovely. Well done. Right? Who did this? Not sure. Awesome. If you're there in the chat, let me know. Um, so this one's really cool. Beautifully rendered skin tones, details in the hair, sweater, lips, and stuff. I think it's really good. You could be really happy with this one, right? Um, yeah, that's a lot of work. I love the way the hair, you've got it, that rhythm of the hair and that one piece goes underneath and is overlapped. You know, you've got your overlaps really good, right? So one thing goes and there's another thing coming over it. And there's a little shadow right there that tells the story, right? You got that. Awesome. And then, you have however that hair is, being held together, right, with braids. Cool. I'm thinking for this one, it looks so good, right? I would just suggest because the background is light and you have a really busy background back here, and so you don't necessarily want that. That's not very aesthetically pleasing, unless it's specifically supposed to be there. Then I would just fool around in a couple of ways, right? One way was the bokeh way. Just pretend things are out of focus, like a camera that is like a 1.8 lens, or which means a shallow depth of field, and everything in the background's going to these beautiful circular shapes. Okay, you have a mix of big ones, small ones, light ones, dark ones, and then make sure they don't have crisp edges. And then I'll just do a quick Gaussian blur, right? Kind of push them into the background so that they're just there, just a hint of it, right? And they're all circles, so they're kind of thematically there's similar shapes there, so that they don't stand out, they don't attract attention. That's one way. Another thing you could do is you could do a gradation, and that is a way of getting away with a lot without doing much. Let me see if I could just do something real quick just for demo purpose here. Just a gradation, top to bottom, left to right, right to left, and just see where you could get away with suggesting a background without really doing one. That goes a long way. Remember, so the bokeh thing, this thing, they're just ways of suggesting a background without doing one, right? So gradation, bokeh, And number three, okay, is the I'm going to try to get my special brush. See if I can make it work live. It's a tough one because it's the. How come I'm not on my brush? Okay. Yeah. This one's hard to control. And it's not doing anything for me because I'm on the eraser. Not good. Okay, so you can pull some of your subject matter into the background here and there. In other words, you're breaking up the edges so they're not so spelled out. Let me see if I can just, get that effect with digital, right? So I would find areas like as I look at the photo, her hair moves into the background of whatever that is back there. It's about the same value. So I can suggest that in, you know, and then there's another little shape up there. What's happening? Let's take a look. And I'm just going to play around. This takes a little while to, right? I might just like that. And then that kind of brings the background and this person into a similar environment. So the figure ground, it's cut out in your drawing, figure ground, to make them relate. And the figure ground sort of talking to each other would be to adjust the edges so that they blend, right? And so you try to find a way to kind of break that edge. And sometimes hard edged things work, like that right here, that stairway or whatever it is. It has a hard edge, so you can introduce some geometric things against her organic round head, so you have straight against a curve, and that might work. There's another corner of the room right there. So now you've got round organic things with some straight geometric things, and that can work too, and just quiet this area down a little bit, with a gradation. And that's a real cheap easy way, and I think it's very aesthetic way to kind of get away with some of this stuff. You can play with it, put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off, break the edge. It's the lost and found edge. So I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but if I have, an edge like that and I want to break it up, it's too harsh, then I'm going to lose some of it. So I'll play the lost, lose the edge, find the edge, lose it here, find again, lose it over there. And then it becomes like this line. It's definitely still a line, but it's now something interesting to look at, in my opinion. I find that really, really works. Just trying to. Huh. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. I'm doing that with her hair here and there, breaking it up and bringing some of the background into her and some of her into the background. Where I can, and playing with abstract stuff. So now you have realistic against abstract, straights against curves, organic, geometric, light against dark, movement, you know, and then you can quiet that down a little bit. Oh, yeah. So much fun, so much beauty, right? I think it's like a great, so fun to do this. And there you go. Flip it. See if it looks good. And that is that. So I love it. I want to see more. I hope you do another one and keep coming back. And next time, put your name on it because that would be important. So I know who you are. Um, so, any questions? You guys got any questions? Let me just check the chat. Yeah. I'm just seeing here. Mimika, you had another one. Here's the one that you did. Yeah, and you fixed it. Right. So it looks great. Did a great job. You pushed the values. You're describing form now. And it looks like painterly, you're putting it down and I can see the benefits, right? You've got your lights, your midtones, your darks, proportions are good, the parts are good, features are good, right? Much better than before. Well done. Good job. All right, everybody, you can be proud of what you've done. I'm so proud of you guys, and I'm so happy to be able to get in here and hopefully make a difference and just share with you guys what I know and what I've learned and struggled with over the years as an artist and as a professional artist. That's so fun for me, and hopefully I can keep doing that. Probably we'll call it. I got a little bit of a headache, and I've gone through everybody's work. Next week I won't be here, so next Wednesday I won't be here. I'll be out of town, and then I'll be back the following week. Okay, I'll let you know in the Facebook group. Um, just checking the chat again. Bring myself back. Hey, I'm back. Do 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 do. There I am. Hey, look. I think I lost my green screen action. And so nice. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, cool. So glad you guys came out. And we'll see you next time. If you liked, if you're new to the channel, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribe. That really helps me, and I really appreciate that. All right, guys. So I'll see you next time. Lots of love. I'm out. Okay. Have a good night.